You know that feeling when you're trying to grasp something really profound, something that could genuinely shift how you see things,
Hmm.
but the sheer amount of information just feels like this huge wall.
Yeah, totally overwhelming sometimes.
And you just wish someone could hand you the cheat sheet, the essential stuff without all the extra noise.
Well, that's pretty much what we're trying to do here today.
Exactly.
So today's deep dive, we're getting into a core framework. It's about understanding the journey toward what the Source calls awakening.
Okay.
We're looking at the Threefold Training. This comes from a 2012 talk by Sayalay Susila, given at the New York Insight Meditation Center. It's in her book now.
Right.
Think of it as a really powerful compression of the Noble Eightfold Path.
A kind of summary.
Yeah, exactly. And we're also looking at a shorter piece, Investigation of the Dhamma. It really highlights mindfulness of breathing,
Oh,
how it's a path to both, serenity and that deeper understanding, that insight.
So we've got Susila's breakdown of morality, concentration, and wisdom training.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, this focused article on breath awareness and investigating reality. It's clear she's drawing on, well, a deep tradition here.
Definitely. Presenting these foundational Buddhist teachings.
Mm-hmm.
And our goal, like always, is to pull out what's most vital for you listening.
Yeah, for you tuning in, we want to extract those key principles of the Threefold Training.
Give you a clear, kind of actionable understanding of what could be a really transformative path without you having to wade through absolutely everything.
Finding those key insights that, stick with you, offer a fresh angle, maybe even if you've heard some of this before.
Exactly.
Okay, let's jump in. Morality training first. Now, morality, that word can feel a bit heavy sometimes.
A little loaded, maybe.
But the way it's presented here, it's really about cultivating mindful self-restraint.
Mhm.
It starts with these 5 core abstentions. Not intentionally taking life.
Right.
Not taking what's not freely given, avoiding sexual misconduct, speaking truthfully.
Crucial.
And steering clear of intoxicants that just cloud your mind.
And what's really interesting here is the why behind them. It's not just a list of don'ts.
Right. What's the reasoning?
Well, the first big reason is compassion. Recognizing that just like you don't want to suffer, neither does anyone else. Every being shares that.
That makes sense.
The Source even gives a pretty stark example about childhood sexual abuse to show the huge harm that comes from a lack of self-restraint.
Wow. Okay.
Makes you think about how that affects people you care about. It makes non-harming feel really, really personal.
Yeah, it shifts it from just rules to understanding our shared, vulnerability.
Exactly. It's less about rigid regulations, more about that shared feeling.
So that's compassion. What's the second reason?
The second is the law of karma. Now, whether you take that literally or more metaphorically.
Right, the principle itself.
The principle is cause and effect. Skillful actions, good actions, tend to lead to good results.
Mm.
Unskillful
Or
ones.
lead to negative ones.
Yeah. And the Source points out these consequences can be immediate, legal trouble, broken trust, or longer-term patterns.
Interesting.
And it connects each specific restraint to a potential karmic outcome. Like, by not taking life, you're cultivating conditions for your own safety, your own longer life, according to this view. By being truthful, you build trust, which protects you from being deceived yourself.
Right. And intoxicants.
Well, it's not just about your health. It's that a clouded mind, an intoxicated mind, is just way more likely to stumble into actions that harm yourself, harm others.
Actions you regret later.
Exactly. Actions you regret. It's about keeping that clarity so you can act skillfully.
Okay, so compassion, karma. What's the third reason for this morality training?
The third is about taming what the text calls gross defilements.
Gross defilements.
Yeah, think of those really powerful, kind of overwhelming impulses, intense anger, consuming greed, that kind of thing.
Okay.
The idea is, by practicing this moral restraint, you're basically training your mind, making it less reactive, less chaotic.
Because how can you get to that stillness for concentration
Exactly.
if your mind is constantly being yanked around by these huge, unskillful urges?
Precisely. Unskillful actions, they create this fertile ground for restlessness, for remorse.
Big obstacle.
Huge obstacles for deep concentration. And it's interesting. The text notes the different approaches. Asia often starting with morality.
Mm-hmm.
The West frequently jumping in with mindfulness.
Yeah, I've seen that.
It suggests, both can work. But the logic is clear. A solid ethical foundation just makes that deeper mental work much more effective. You're creating the right internal conditions for the mind to settle down.
Makes sense. And it's not just about avoiding the bad stuff, right? There are also benefits, these 5 blessings mentioned.
That's right. Positive outcomes. First, improved health, which is linked back to that karmic idea of not harming.
Okay.
Second, a good reputation. People trust you, they like you. Trustworthiness naturally attracts positive connections.
What's the third one?
Third is strong self-confidence and fearlessness. This is quite deep.
How so?
It suggests that a lot of our insecurity might actually stem from acting against our own inner sense of right and wrong.
Huh. Interesting.
And it even addresses the point that, yeah, even good people feel fear. But it suggests maybe that fear is rooted in being too self-focused. Whereas morality practiced with genuine care for others builds more resilient, courageous inner state.
Aligning actions with values builds inner strength. I like that.
Yeah, it breeds that inner strength.
Okay, so health, reputation, confidence. What are the last 2 blessings?
The final 2 are peace at the moment of death, connected to the belief in rebirth and positive future states from good actions.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the most practical one for this life, freedom from remorse.
Ah, yeah. Because a guilty conscience is noisy.
Exactly. As the text implies, a clear conscience lets the mind settle, become much more still, more focused, which, sets the stage perfectly for the next training.
Concentration training.
Concentration training. And it's really important here to get the main goal, at least within these Buddhist teachings.
Oh.
Because while lots of us, we seek concentration for peace, for stress relief,
Yeah.
which is valid.
Sure.
The ultimate aim here is different. It's developing a mind that can see reality clearly, see things as they actually are.
Right, those analogies you mentioned from the text were great. The flickering lamp.
Yeah, trying to see in a dark room with a flickering lamp, that's the scattered mind.
Or the muddy pond.
Or the muddy pond, yeah. You can't see the bottom until the silt settles.
Mm-hmm.
That's the unconcentrated mind. We need that stillness for clear perception.
So clarity is key.
Clarity is the main goal, though the text does mention other benefits, briefly.
Mm-hmm.
Peace of mind, maybe a good rebirth, happiness, even mentions the potential for developing mundane psychic powers, like recalling past lives, things like that.
Oh, okay.
But then it brings it right back. The main point is insight, that deep understanding.
So what is this concentration we're aiming for? How does the text define it?
The definition given is stillness and unification of the mind on a single object.
Stillness and unification.
Yeah. It paints a picture of a mind that isn't just bounced around by every thought, every sensation. It contrasts it with a mind that's described as like weak, powerless, feeble.
Okay. And how do we get there? What are the methods?
Well, there are various ways mentioned. The text lists several traditional practices. Mindfulness of breathing, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Also the 4 sublime abidings, loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity. Contemplating the 32 impure parts of the body, skeleton meditation.
Wow, okay. Specific.
Yeah, 4 elements meditation too.
Yeah.
Lots detailed in classic texts like the Visuddhimagga. But it specifically recommends mindfulness of breathing Anapanasati.
Why that one in particular?
But mainly because it's relatively easy to learn and, well, the breath is always there. It's constantly accessible.
Can't argue with that. Okay, so let's get practical. Mindfulness of breathing. How does it work?
Okay. The core instruction is focus your attention on the sensation of the breath as it enters and leaves the body, specifically right there at the nostrils or maybe the upper lip area, the point of contact. And importantly, the text says don't follow the breath into the body or out. Just stay anchored at that one spot.
Okay, anchor at the nostrils. And how should you observe it?
Gently, without manipulation. You're not trying to control the breath, make it deeper or slower. Just notice its natural rhythm.
So no forcing it?
No strain, no expectation, just a consistent, relaxed awareness of that in and out flow. It's sustained attention, but not like a tense grip on the breath.
The text also mentioned noticing long or short breaths.
Yeah, it does. You become aware, oh, that was a long breath, or that one was shorter. But again, the caution is, don't intentionally make them long or short.
Just observe what's happening.
Exactly. There's that nice analogy of someone just watching a river flow by. You're just witnessing the natural course.
I like that. So you watch the breath.
And as your attention starts to settle there, you begin to perceive the whole cycle more clearly. The in-breath, the little pause, the out-breath, the pause again.
Mm-hmm.
With continuous practice, this mindfulness deepens. But, and this is a big but, as you keep going, you'll probably run into the 5 hindrances.
The roadblocks.
The roadblocks, yeah. Sensual desire, ill will or anger, restlessness and remorse, sloth and torpor, like sleepiness or dullness and doubt.
Okay.
And these are seen as major problems, obstacles for both concentration and for developing wisdom later on.
So what do you do about them? Does the text offer solutions? Antidotes?
It does. Specific antidotes for each one. For sensual desire, it suggests contemplating the less attractive side of whatever you're craving.
Like seeing food before it's nicely presented, or the body's less glamorous aspects.
Things like that. For ill will, the antidote is cultivating loving kindness, forgiveness.
Makes sense. What about restlessness, or that sleepy feeling?
When the mind's jumpy with restlessness or regret, really steadying the focus on the breath helps. Maybe even counting breaths gently, like 1 to 5, over and over, can anchor it.
Okay.
For sloth and torpor, that dullness, it suggests bringing awareness to light or cultivating a sense of energy.
In doubt.
Doubt can be worked with by cultivating faith and confidence, maybe by talking with a teacher you trust, or exploring the teachings more deeply to resolve questions.
So there are active strategies.
Definitely. But interestingly, there's also an alternative approach mentioned.
How?
If actively applying an antidote isn't working or feels like too much struggle, you can try just gently acknowledging the hindrance is there. Restlessness without getting caught up in the story, and then just patiently, gently bring your attention back to the breath.
Like don't feed it energy.
Exactly. Non-engagement. It weakens their grip over time.
Okay. So you work with the hindrances. What happens next as the concentration gets stronger? The text mentions signs. Nimitta.
Yes, nimitta. As the practice deepens and the hindrances quiet down, certain signs or images might arise in the mind's eye.
Like what?
Well, the first one might be what's called a preparation sign. It could seem like a sort of vague grayness, maybe like smoke. The really key instruction here is, don't get excited, don't get scared. Just note it and stay with the breath or the sign itself.
So steady.
Stay steady. If you maintain that focused attention, the sign can stabilize, become clearer. It might transform into the learning sign.
What's that like?
Often described as white, maybe like a puff of cotton, more stable.
Okay.
And with even more sustained, unwavering concentration, this can develop into the counterpart sign.
And that is?
This one's described as really clear, bright, maybe brilliant, like a crystal, a diamond, a bright star. Very luminous.
Wow.
And it's through keeping the attention steadily fixed on this counterpart sign that these deeper states of concentration, called jhana or apanasamadhi, can arise.
So the signs are like markers of deepening focus?
Kind of. Markers that the mind is really unifying and other sensory input is falling away.
And in those deeper states, the jhana states, what's that like?
Well, the text mentions experiencing rapture or piti. It might feel like physical sensations, like waves of energy, a feeling of lightness, along with a very deep sense of joy and happiness, sukha, that's said to be far beyond ordinary sensual pleasure.
Sounds pretty profound.
It is. And the text explains the outcome of developing this really concentrated mind is profound peace, deep happiness, less pull from fleeting desires, just this inner stillness.
And that stillness is the key.
It's the essential foundation for the third training.
Yeah.
Wisdom.
Okay. Wisdom training, what's the focus here?
So now the object of our attention kind of broadens out from just the breath. It shifts to the entirety of our present moment experience.
Everything.
Everything arising in the body and mind. The physical stuff, the mental stuff, what are called the physical and mental aggregates.
Aggregates, okay.
And the focus is on observing their nature, how they arise, how they stick around for a moment, and how they inevitably pass away. It's about directly seeing their impermanence.
Experiencing change directly. Let's start with the physical side, materiality.
Right. So this covers all bodily sensations, warmth, coolness, pressure, tightness, tingling, movement, all of it. The text explains these are really just manifestations of 4 fundamental elements or qualities. Earth element, which is like solidity, hardness, roughness.
Okay.
Fire element, heat and cold. Water element, cohesion, fluidity, tightness. And wind element, movement, vibration, including the breath, the heartbeat, any sense of motion.
So my body isn't really a solid thing.
Exactly. It emphasizes that what we call my body is just a conventional label for this constantly shifting interplay of these elemental characteristics. It's not some fixed, permanent entity.
So the practice is to notice these sensations.
Yes, and recognize them as these changing elements. Through consistent mindful observation, you start to really see this ceaseless flux. Warmth arises, fades, pressure shifts, kindling comes and goes.
So you witness the change.
You witness the constant change. And as you watch this relentless arising and passing, you start to recognize, wow, I don't really have lasting control over any of this. This inherent instability, this constant change, this lack of ultimate satisfaction, that's a key part of what's meant by dukkha, often translated as suffering or unsatisfactoriness.
Okay.
And this direct seeing of impermanence and lack of control leads straight to understanding non-self, anatta. This collection of changing elements isn't a permanent, independent me.
The text also mentions something about seeing particles.
Yeah, it suggests that with really deep concentration, you might even perceive the body dissolving into like this flow of minute particles constantly arising and ceasing. The illusion of solidity just breaks down.
Wow. And the result of seeing this?
The profound impact is a kind of disenchantment, a dispassion. You stop clinging so tightly to the body as me or mine.
Letting go of that identification.
Exactly. And when you don't identify so strongly with this impermanent physical form, the mind becomes incredibly resilient, much less disturbed by aging, sickness, even the thought of death.
Okay, that covers the physical. What about the mental aggregates?
Right. The text really stresses how important it is to let go of clinging to the mind itself.
Mm-hmm.
So this involves contemplating feelings, perceptions, mental fabrications or formations, and consciousness itself.
Why is understanding the mind so key?
Because, as the text highlights, the mind is the forerunner. It initiates our actions. It's where our defilements, greed, hatred, delusion originate. Understanding it is crucial for getting free from suffering.
Okay, let's break those down. Feelings first. Vedana.
So in this context, feeling means the basic tone of experience. Pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And it can be felt physically or purely mentally.
Got it. Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral.
Then the text outlines these cycles. How pleasant feelings, if we're not mindful, not aware.
Can lead to wanting more, craving.
Exactly. Craving arises, then that intensifies into clinging, maybe greed, and that can fuel unskillful mental states, which then lead to unskillful speech or actions.
Ah, the chain reaction.
Yeah, and unpleasant feelings. If we're unaware, they trigger aversion, anger, pushing away, which also leads to negativity, maybe harming others or ourselves.
So the key is awareness.
The crucial thing is cultivating mindfulness of all these feelings as they arise. Just noticing, pleasant feeling, unpleasant, neutral, without immediately reacting.
And what does that achieve?
You start to see how incredibly impermanent feelings are. One minute you feel annoyed because your boss yelled, the next minute you feel elated because your stocks went up. They change constantly.
Right.
Wisdom then reveals the non-self nature of feeling. Its job is just to register pleasantness or unpleasantness.
Yeah.
It's not I who feels. Feeling is just a temporary mental event. It's impersonal.
Okay, so feeling is one mental aggregate. Next is perception.
Then yeah.
Perception. Yeah. This is the function that recognizes features and makes a mental note or label. This is a tree. This tastes salty. I've seen this person before. It identifies things.
Okay. How does that link to problems?
Well, it gets linked to feeling. If we have a pleasant feeling associated with something, say, cheesecake.
Cheesecake.
Right. We might form the perception that cheesecake is inherently pleasant and that this pleasant feeling is a permanent quality of the cheesecake. Ah, I see. We project onto it.
We project. And this can lead to perceiving a permanent I, who is the one enjoying this permanently pleasant thing. We start building a story around it.
The cheesecake example in the text was good for that.
Yeah, the past perception, cheesecake tasty, can automatically trigger craving next time you see it, right?
Yeah.
Even if this particular cheesecake isn't actually that good or you're already full.
The perception overrides the current reality.
Exactly. Wisdom training lets you watch perception itself changing. See, it's not fixed.
Yeah.
It dismantles those illusions of permanence and inherent qualities.
Okay. Feelings, perceptions, then mental fabrications. Sankhara. That sounds complex.
It can sound complex. They're called fabrications or formations because they actively construct or shape our experience. They fabricate things. They give intentions, thoughts, mental patterns, volition.
So they create our experience.
They shape it, yeah.
Yeah.
The text says they're rooted in ignorance, not seeing things clearly, and craving. And volition, our intention, is a key driving force. Ignorance and craving lead us to aim for and cling to all these aggregates, body, feelings, perceptions, etc., as selves, usually seeking pleasure or continued existence.
Identifying with them as me.
Right. And when we regard these fabricated things as me or mine, we get attached, we delight in them, we desire them, and we perform actions karma to try and get more of them in the future.
So wisdom training helps us see they're just fabricated.
Exactly. It involves carefully looking at how each aggregate is constructed, seeing the causes and conditions that make it arise, without identifying it as a solid, independent self.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Think about concentration again during mindfulness of breathing. That state of focused attention, that's a sankhara, a fabricated mental state.
Okay.
It depends on conditions. Effort, the object breath, reducing hindrances. If you think, wow, I'm so concentrated, you're identifying with this temporary conditioned state.
Right, because it comes and goes.
Exactly. If concentration was really I, you'd be able to just switch it on and keep it perfectly steady all the time. But we know that's not how it works. It's conditioned, impermanent.
Got it. That clarifies it. Okay, last one. Consciousness. Vinya.
Consciousness, defined simply as the characteristic of knowing an object, being aware of something.
Like seeing, hearing.
Exactly. The text lists the 6 types. Eye consciousness, knowing sights. Ear consciousness, knowing sounds. Nose smells, tongue tastes, body touches. And mind consciousness, knowing thoughts, ideas, memories.
And the example of watching TV while eating chips.
Yeah, that shows how multiple types can be operating almost simultaneously. You're seeing the screen, hearing the sound, tasting the chips, feeling them in your hand, maybe having thoughts about the show.
It feels like one continuous awareness, though. Like I am doing all that.
Right. Because they arise and cease incredibly quickly, and they're all linked through our senses and the objects, we tend to bundle them all together and label it I.
So how does wisdom help here?
It helps us understand that each type of consciousness only arises when specific conditions are met. For I consciousness to arise, you need a functioning I, light, and object, contact between them, and attention. Take away any one of those, and seeing consciousness doesn't happen for that object.
It's conditional, dependent.
Highly conditional. And wisdom training involves observing each instance of consciousness, seeing, hearing, thinking, understanding its specific function, and realizing it's also impermanent and not a solid self. Consciousness also has this tendency to latch on to objects, forms, feelings, perceptions, mental stuff. And delighting in those objects fuels its continuation, fuels the arising of the aggregates again in the future.
So seeing the impermanence of the other aggregates.
Stops consciousness from finding a stable place to land, to attach. It breaks that cycle. It prevents the future buildup of suffering, aging, sickness, death, grief, all of it.
Wow. Okay. So pulling that all together, wisdom training is?
It's the sustained, mindful observation of body and mind, really looking closely to understand deeply that they are impermanent, ultimately unsatisfactory in some way, dukkha, and lack an inherent independent self, anatta.
And that understanding is what leads to?
It leads to disenchantment, as we said, a fading of fascination. And that allows for the letting go of attachment, of clinging, which the teachings identify as the root cause of suffering, and letting go of the cause.
Means the cessation of suffering itself.
That's the goal, freedom.
Okay. So, to wrap this up, our deep dive into Sayalay Susila's Threefold Training shows this really interconnected path.
Morality gives the ethical foundation, concentration builds the mental clarity and focus, and wisdom provides the penetrating insight into reality.
And together, these 3 trainings capture the essence of the Noble Eightfold Path.
Yeah. The text reminds us, those 5 aggregates we cling to, body, feeling, perception, fabrications, consciousness that is the truth of suffering.
Right.
And our craving for them, which comes from ignorance, from not seeing their true nature, that is the origin of suffering.
So ending suffering means ending that craving.
Exactly. And the Threefold Training is the path, the method for doing that. By revealing the impermanent, unsatisfactory, non-self nature of everything we cling to.
There was that quote you mentioned.
Yeah, from the Mahaparinibbana. It really emphasizes the synergy. Virtuous conduct supports concentration. Concentration supports wisdom.
And wisdom fully developed leads to a mind utterly free from the taints or pains of lust, becoming, and ignorance.
Beautifully put. It highlights the progressive nature.
It's gradual, right? Morality supports concentration. Concentration supports wisdom.
It's gradual, yes. But they also support each other mutually. As your concentration deepens or your wisdom grows, it actually becomes easier to live ethically.
Ah, okay. It's not just one way.
Not just one way. And living with integrity, good morality, definitely helps the mind settle for concentration. They feed into each other.
Until ultimately.
Ultimately, the full maturing of wisdom training is said to uproot the fundamental defilements, lust, hatred, delusion completely,
Whoa.
leading to total liberation, complete freedom.
Powerful stuff. So as we finish this depth dive, maybe something for you, the listener, to think about. Which of these 3 trainings, morality, concentration, or wisdom, feels most, I don't know, relevant or maybe most challenging for you right now in your own life.
Yeah, where does your attention get drawn?
And maybe consider how even just small intentional steps in any one of these areas might start to shift how you understand yourself and your experiences.
And perhaps, just gently contemplate that idea of non-self. Could looking through that lens offer a different perspective on your attachments, maybe on the things that cause you suffering? Something to mull over.